starting like this. Come on, Johanna.
And action.
Hey, guys.
Welcome everyone to the Quarantine, Coffee, and Jesus Colossians countdown finale final. We are here. I'm still talking close to the mic. Sorry, guys. That was weird. We've just been looking at Colossians and Philemon over the past, 4 weeks? Is that right? Cool. It's flown by, really. I've loved every second of quarantine so far. Every moment of being alone by myself and my thoughts. It's been great. Alone. But as we've been talking and looking at Colossians, we thought we would end the book by just getting all of us together and talking through our biggest takeaways, our biggest learning moments, just everything that we've walked away with and what we wanted to not only challenge ourselves with, but challenge you guys who have also been doing this with us with. That was a weird sentence. But yeah, so as we've gone through, if you haven't caught up, you have plenty of time because you're still in quarantine. And so jump on there, jump on our YouTube page. You can watch all of them still. But everybody on here has taught little bits and pieces of it, as well as learned from each other on it. And so as we go through today, we just wanted to jump around, kind of talk about our biggest takeaways, biggest things that we were challenged with. So we'll start with Julianner. You're the next square next to me. As you walked through this, what was the biggest takeaway that you had, and what was the biggest thing that you were challenged with?
Okie dokie. I think they're the same thing for me. And they all kind of go together. I talked about that a lot. I feel like whenever I think about one thing, it kind of goes into the next thing, and it's a big circle. But for me, the biggest takeaway is, and the biggest challenge is kind of what Johanna talked about, but really making sure that Jesus is the king of my life, like the center of it. And I don't think I do a very good job of it all the time. And I know that Cole talked about it a bit, of like the mundane pieces of life. Like, am I really making God the center of my life in just the day-to-day? I think it's easy for work and like these types of things to really be like thinking about God, thinking about what he did. We just came out of Easter a couple weeks ago, which I was like on fire, like, yeah, like Jesus died for my sins, and like this is what it means, and was really pumped up. But it's kind of like those bigger moments. I really think about God and how he really plays like a role in all these different areas of my life. But then it kind of like fades after a while. And then I just wake up and have breakfast, and I start to do these like mundane routines. And I was really challenged by that of like, am I actually making God like the king of my heart in all areas, or just the areas that are like showcased or part of my job? And that was kind of difficult to wrestle with, because I don't think I always do the best job when nobody's looking and when it's just me at home, especially in quarantine. You know, it's like I have no accountability for anything that I do right now. And so to really like sit with God in some moments and be like, I suck, and to feel like his grace of like, that's okay, and like I'm here with you, and we're gonna like work through this together, and just do my best and talk to like my friends about it, talk to you guys about it, and just try to like work through that and know that it's okay, that I don't have to be on fire like all the time, but to at least keep it in front of me to try and like work through those things. I think that's been probably my biggest like practical takeaway, but also something really hard that I think I've been struggling with, and I'm also challenged by.
That's awesome. So you're saying your 40,000 plants can't hold you accountable, is what you're getting at?
No.
All right, next question. So with that though, with that challenge, what's one step that you've made to like start changing that?
Definitely just like quiet time. I've been just trying to be more disciplined in the morning of like waking up, and even if that's listening to worship music or prayer or reading my Bible, that's outside of whatever it is we're doing in kids ministry, we're doing with Colossians, because I'm like, well, I'm studying Colossians, I'll just read Colossians. But then it becomes like this work routine where I'm like, I need to read something that's for me to build my relationship with God, that's totally separate from my job. And so I have like a morning devotional that I do. It's like this, just those like short ones that I've been reading, and it's not much, but it really, it's like this personal accountability, and it's something small that I feel like really helps me.
It's awesome. Cool. Thanks. James, what about you? As you've walked through this, what's been your biggest takeaway? And then where do you feel like you've had the biggest like hit upside the head moment of like, oh, I'm not doing that well, or I need to change this?
Mm-hmm. My biggest takeaway, I think, from doing this is like this has made me really dig into the Bible and actually study it, which I'd like to say that I've done that a lot before, but really I like would kind of do it here and there. But this actually like made me dig in and actually study this Bible. And it's just so cool, like the stuff that I've discovered and pulled out of it. It just gives you a whole different perspective on the whole thing. So I feel like that's been like my biggest takeaway. And then like learning about Paul and the type of man he was, like really has stuck with me a lot. Because I feel like I haven't like I knew who Paul was, like he's this guy that wrote most of the New Testament, but I never really like dug into like the type of man he was and like just how on fire for Christ he was. I think that has overall been my biggest takeaway, and just like the example that he sets up for us. Like in the last chapter we went through, just how he doesn't just like give you these words and just like throw all these words at you. Like he shows how he puts action to his words, and then he also shows you practical ways to do it, which I feel like I just have so much respect for him in that way. And like I wish I could like talk to him today and just like see just like really the type of guy he is. I just think like he's so cool. So I feel like that's been my biggest takeaway. It's just like actually studying the Bible and learning the type of guy that Paul is. I'd say my biggest challenge, that's what you asked me, right? My biggest challenge with this?
Yeah, like 45 minutes ago, James. Continue.
I feel like
JK.
Anna right now, so maybe not.
You're doing great. Juliana's videos were like triple this length, so you're doing great.
Cool. My biggest challenge, I feel like, has been, I think it was last week's, maybe 2 weeks ago, but like where like the parts of your life that you're not giving control up to Jesus or letting Jesus take control. I think I like to think that I'm like, oh yeah, Jesus totally has complete control over my life, like every aspect of my life, every area. But I think this has made me really like challenged me to really think about it, to dig into the areas of my life and be like, oh yeah, that's something that I'm not giving up to Jesus and letting him take control. That's like something that I'm still clenching my fist on. So it's definitely like made me take the time to not just ignore those things and actually think about it. So
that's awesome.
Yep.
That was a really good answer. It was also hard. If anybody wants to rewind and see how awkward Carrie was drinking out of her Yeti, please do that.
Oh, I missed it.
Oh, don't worry, James. You can rewind and watch.
Cool. Can't wait.
Yeah. I don't know what you just said. Jonas, hit us with your answer. What was your biggest takeaway, and where did you see the biggest challenge as you walked through it?
I think my biggest takeaway was kind of like echoing what Jamie said, but like finding joy in every situation. So I tend to either like numb out or get really angry about situations. And like just hearing about like Paul's situation and studying about that, and just that he's still so joyful and finding his joy in Christ. I think that's been something, even since my trip from Africa, it's been something I've been challenged with. The people in Uganda were really joyful, and we had one little girl who we were doing like our happy crappy things at the end of the day, and she was in our circle and doing it with us, and she's like, oh, nothing crappy, just joy. And so that kind of became like the theme of our trip, was just joy. And then I think it like led really well into this, and Paul encouraging people to have joy in whatever circumstance. So think that was probably my biggest takeaway. And then my biggest challenge, again, to echo Jamie, sorry, is just trusting Christ in everything, and making him like my center, because I think like I feel the most secure like when our finances look perfect, or I have complete control over the situation. And so it was a good reminder. I think even in taking the internship, God's really been challenging me with like letting a lot of that control go, and trusting in him that like, hey, like I'm going to take care of you and it's going to be okay. So this was a good reminder with everything going on, and that I don't have control over a lot of different situations in my life that like I've just kind of like found myself in, but that like God's got like an ultimate good plan, and so trusting in that.
It's awesome. The connection between both your takeaway and your challenge to go together. That's really awesome. All right, Dan, unmute yourself. Hit us with some of that down and wisdom. I don't know. Let's go with it.
I don't know where to go from that. I think one of the big threads that holds this book together is the idea of power, and where power really lies in the world compared to kind of the illusion of power that we so often see. So I think there's this contrast between, Paul's writing from prison, right? So he's literally a prison. He's under the power of the state, under this king, Caesar, who he's proclaimed to be a false or less worthy king than Jesus. And so he like holds these two things in contrast. So there's the powers of the world that are kind of centered around control and kind of, are you in a group or are you out of a group, whether that's like racial or religious or, your wealth status or your education level, who your parents are, whatever. But all those expressions of power are fleeting, they're isolating, they're often destructive. And then you contrast that to where the true power lies, which is in the one who made the world, holds it together, and in Jesus offers a new kingdom and a new humanity to the world. And if you're connected to that, then those other power sources that we might identify with kind of dissipate or should dissipate. And those two like kingdoms look very different. And one is more beautiful and compelling than the other, characterized by grace and love and reconciliation and peace and forgiveness and diversity, and so I think the challenge out of that for me, like Paul was like one of those competing power sources for the Colossians was those false teachers. It's like, do I get distracted by do I think I have enough in Jesus and being connected to Jesus, or do I have to prove myself as valuable by adding something else? And that is one of those like classic gospel message, really simple to say, but really, really hard to live out. And when you look at the story of Philemon, and I bring that up because it's fresh in my head, it's like, what am I willing to lay down? Because I'm secure in who I am in Jesus and being a part of his kingdom.
What do you think right now that is for you? Like, as you spit that out right now, like what's one thing that you're like, here's something I need to lay down based off of my security in that, or here's what I've been holding on to based off of insecurity in that?
Yeah, and I think that security thing is huge. It's like powers in the world have to always grasp and control things, whereas God and Jesus was willing to let things go. And I think I mentioned this at the top of my talk on Tuesday or whatever day it was, that like the Tychicus thing. Am I happy with being someone who's characterized as faithful, or do I want to be recognized for accomplishments? I think that is like an ongoing thing for me, just in how I'm wired and my story. And it's been that beautiful, like Colossians and Philemon has been that beautiful merging of encouragement and challenge, I think. So there's freedom in going, like, I don't need to prove anything. I am enough and I have enough in Jesus. But then the challenge of living that out and letting things go. Yeah.
That's super hard. That's awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, really hard.
Carrie DeWitt, you're up.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you for thanking me. Where was your biggest takeaway? Where was your biggest challenge? Hit us with it.
So I think mine too, like Juliana, are like the same or in the same. I think it was the biggest takeaway because it challenged me the most. So I obviously learned a ton from the last two books that we've studied, and a lot of what Paul said really resonated with me. But I think my biggest takeaway is actually from how Paul said these things and how he did it. So like, if you've read it, you know that Paul doesn't really shy away from hard truth. He doesn't water it down. He doesn't like sugarcoat anything. He's really straightforward and blunt about it. And he calls people out when he sees areas of their life that need to be realigned and or changed to align with what Jesus has to say is better. But then there's also really like no question that he loves the people he's talking to. Like you can just tell like he loves this church. He loves the people of this church. And the only reason he's even saying this is coming from a place of love so that they have a better, fuller life with Jesus. And then on top of all that, he like sprinkles it all with grace, like knowing that none of them or himself will never get it perfectly or do it right. And so you can sense like this grace of like, you're never going to get it perfectly. But he's there to like redirect them like any good friend would. And he doesn't shame them when they mess up. He doesn't condemn them. So that really stood out to me as I was thinking this morning, like what my takeaway was. And I was like, yeah, I learned a ton, but it's like how he did it. And I realized that the reason that stuck out to me so much was that I suck at it. So like growing up, I never really saw that modeled or demonstrated of like how to have a hard conversation, how to express like either hurt or just something that you see in somebody's life that could be better or that just isn't healthy. And so I never saw that modeled. And so I've grown up my whole life. I'm 30 or so right now. And
plus or minus.
Plus or minus. And still to this day really have a hard time because to me, calling things out always means confrontation. It means fighting. It means like you don't love that person. And so this was so challenging to me. Like you can call somebody out. You can love somebody so much that you're willing to have a hard conversation and point out a blind spot or a weak spot. And it can end with like, you're still friends and you still love each other and everything's still okay. So that was super challenging to me. And I really admire Paul for that. And I'm learning a lot from Paul on how to like care enough about people to start doing that. And I think on the flip side of that, it's teaching me or challenging me to learn how to be on the receiving end of like hard truth too.
That's great. Thanks, Carrie DeWitt. For those of you wondering, it is 30 plus. So, Nicole, you are up. Sorry, JK, Carrie.
Don't be mean to my friend.
Okay, so sorry. Your friend ignores you all the time on FaceTime, so.
Yeah, get him.
We're just getting past that.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry, guys. Won't happen again. Nicole, hit us with what your biggest takeaway was, what your biggest challenge was.
That's hard because I feel like every single video that I've seen, it's just like, yes, that, and that. Like, I take away something from every video. I'm always challenged by every video, so to pick just one, I think is really hard. So I'll go with the most recent then. In Carrie's video, she had to go through all the names, and I am totally guilty of. I'll see those chapters of the Bible where it's like, this person's the son of this person, that's the son of this person, and this person was this many years old when this person was born, and like all this, and I'll skip over it.
I'm like, I can't pronounce any of that. I'm just not even going to read it. And to Carrie's point, it's like, it's in the Bible for a reason. It's important. And we shouldn't just skip over it because we don't understand it. And it's like, oh, it's all these names that I can't pronounce and that look like somebody just took the alphabet and like Yahtzeed it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, these letters go together. And so I skip over it all the time. And instead, I want to challenge myself now when I run across those kind of verses to actually dive in and be like, well, who were these people and why are they being mentioned?
Yeah.
Because that does serve a purpose in it. And also, the biggest thing I was challenged with is the prayer thing too, of I'll get prayer requests throughout the day or whatever, and I'll just like kind of compile them and then pray about it later. Why don't I just stop what I'm doing right then and there and just pray about it? Because that's what I'm actually being asked to do, instead of like compiling them for the day, saving them for like when I pray before I fall asleep. When it's like that person actually needed prayer like right then and there, otherwise they wouldn't have asked for it.
Yeah.
And so just being more mindful of getting a prayer request and stopping what I'm doing. And ironically enough, after Carrie's video, I got a text message with a prayer request. And I was like, what good timing. And so I stopped what I was doing and I said like a quick prayer. And it was a moment of realization of like, that didn't like put this huge dent in my selfish day. And it was super easy for me to just take a moment and do what that person was asking of me to do.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's great. Cool. Yeah, my biggest, I would say my biggest challenge, I had a whole counseling session on it today, so thanks a lot for that, guys. But like looking at, it's your guys' fault for sure. But looking at like the idea of Jesus being the head of everything that we do and letting him control everything and letting him do that is a really great idea in my head that I can like in my head be like, oh yeah, that's great. I'll let him do that. But letting my ego and my cockiness go to the wayside instead of letting that control what I do. I think I'm very competitive, very cocky. I can lean into arrogance really easily, and I can just take it on of like, I'm Cole Willard, I'm going to take this on and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to be the best or to push. It comes from a good spot of like, we can push our campus further right now. We can push our team further. We can push whatever. I can push myself further, but it also plays out in negative ways of like, in order to do that, I have to flatten other people. And so instead of letting myself control everything, instead of letting myself decide all these things, instead of letting myself be the head of what my day looks like or my life looks like, letting Jesus take that over is a huge step and barrier for me. I think I let him control some parts, but then it's like, no, I still want to do all this other stuff. And so it's a big, like, it's a wrestling match in my brain still. I haven't like fully processed it or fully like let him take over, I guess I could say. Cool. Jamie, will you give us a little intro of what is coming down the pipeline for the next 2 weeks? And then from there we'll head out.
Sure thing. So the next 2 weeks, I won't give too much away because Johanna's gonna give us a little video about it.
Yeah, I just meant like a little teaser for the
Yeah.
teaser for the thing. Yeah.
So we are going to take a break from digging into a specific book of the Bible. We are going to go back into some of the Gospels in the beginning, the biographies of Jesus, and go through some of these miracles that Jesus did. And kind of like why he chose to do miracles, why, like, what power he had to do this, what he was trying to teach the people, and just kind of really, really dig into that. So we're going to go through quite a few of them. Some of them are like more popular ones that we hear about, and then the other ones are kind of ones that I feel like I've skipped over. So yeah, we're just going to dig into that, and it should be fun.
Sick.
Yep.
Tight. Well, as we go through these next couple weeks, keep sharing these videos, keep sending them to friends, keep walking through it with friends or family. We've been trying to gear them to a bunch of different age ranges and a bunch of different people so that in your time in quarantine, you can spend it with Jesus. We love you guys. Keep tuning in. See you next week.